This program of the Men's Network is hosted by Chris Schneider, sports director, author, and motivational speaker. He's available for speaking engagements nationwide. For more information, visit radioactivespeaking.com.
Hey, make sure those air conditioners are working today. It is going to get hot, hot, hot again. No surprise there, right? When we come back, we're going to talk to an all-time great. Who, you ask? Well, you're just going to have to wait to find out. Hey, welcome back. I'm Chris Schneider, sports director for CBS Radio here in Dallas. In our first session, I shared with you a number of verses from the Apostle Paul that showed a lot of similarities between sports and our Christian race. He talked about things like the goal, the prize, running a good race. All the runners run, but only one gets the prize. And of course, fighting the good fight. How is it that we win? What does it take to reach the goal, to get that prize? That's what we're going to talk about in this second session of Running the Race. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. I love sports. I just never had the talent to be a pro athlete myself, so I wound up being a sportscaster instead. It's actually the best of both worlds. I can enjoy the sports up close without the bruises and concussions and knee surgeries. Did you know that former Washington Redskin and Denver Bronco lineman Mark Schlereth underwent 29 surgeries? 20 of those were performed on his knees, 15 on his left, 5 on his right. After cutting on his left knee for the 13th time, then Bronco coach Mike Shanahan said, he has a great pain threshold. I should say so. Now, like we said in segment 1, the Bible uses a lot of sports imagery, like running the race and fighting the fight. Well, I've learned something watching and interviewing Hall of Fame players like Cal Ripken Jr., and Pudge Rodriguez, and Alex Rodriguez, things that we can use in our spiritual race. There are two things that all great athletes have in common: talent and training. Now, just because you have talent doesn't mean a whole lot. You have to do something with it. Take Michael Jordan, for example. Did you know that MJ, the guy who would go on to be considered by most to be the best basketball player the world has ever seen, he was cut from his high school team? It's true. He had the talent, but he had to work on it. He had to train it in order to get the most out of it. So let's start by taking a closer look at talent. Obviously, God gave these Hall of Famers that I've mentioned talent in their respective sports, but just because they had talent didn't ensure success. There were certain steps they had to take in order to get the most out of their talent. The first thing they had to do was recognize it. Now, some talent is easy to spot. Take Tiger Woods, whose dad saw young Eldrick's talent right away. Eldrick, or Tiger as we know him today, was so good he went on the Mike Douglas show with Bob Hope at the age of 2 years old to hit golf balls.
So right now I'd like you to meet Tiger Woods and his father Earl Woods. Would you come out? Get that other ball. How old are you, Tiger?
Daddy.
Two?
Now, in the Men's Network series of Profiles Beyond the Spotlight, I asked Brad McCoy, father of Colt, who had been one of the winningest college quarterbacks in football history, when he saw talent in his young son. So when did you know Colt was a football player?
Colt didn't play football organized until he was a 7th grader, within the school system, and I knew he was going to be an athlete really early. You know, he did play little dribblers basketball and played soccer and baseball and did all the non-contact things, and we knew really quick that there was something special about him, and we would have to sit him down, you know, early on, 5, 6, 7 years old, because he would score all the points, and you know, the other team wouldn't score any.
Now, after recognizing their talent, these Hall of Famers had to make a decision to do something with it. They committed long hours to perfecting their skills. Three guys come to mind as far as working very hard to hone their talent and get the most out of it. I remember reading Jerry West's book about how he used to practice day and night shooting the basketball. Larry Bird and Pistol Pete Maravich are other great examples of guys who practiced for hours on end working to get the most out of their talent. And the third thing these guys had to do was to take a chance. They knew they could lose, they knew they could be rejected, they knew they could go down in flames, but they still took a risk and put it out there. Every great player had to do this at some point early in their lives. Just like Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi didn't know they were going to be great coaches when they were carpooling, these great athletes didn't know what the future held for them either. They had to step out and take a chance. And it didn't stop there. These great athletes have to take a chance every time they play. I remember going into a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. All the sports channels were touting Peyton Manning as the greatest quarterback ever. And then his team lost the big game, and all of a sudden they were saying, Manning's a bust, he's overrated. Now these guys have to be willing to put it out there every time they play, even when they take their team to the Super Bowl. That's one of the reasons they work so hard to be so good. We need that kind of moxie to excel at our daily race. So what are your talents? Step one, of course, is to recognize your talents, and don't tell me you don't have any. God doesn't make mistakes. He made all of us good at something and not so good at others. I, for example, am a small white guy. I found out early that as much as I wanted to be an NBA star, just wasn't going to happen. But God did bless me with other skills that He's called me to use to serve His purpose. He gave me the ability to talk, so I talk. He gave me the ability to write stories, so I write books. He made me really handsome, so I can be seen on TV. Now, you probably already have a pretty good idea of what your talents, skills, and abilities are. But if you're at a loss of thinking of any, then start with your interests. That is where you will uncover some gifts. If you're still not sure, talk about it with some friends that you can trust. Sometimes others can see our talents before we can. Then it's time to start developing these talents. That's the second thing we learned from great athletes. They made the most of their talent by acting on it, by doing something with it. And the third thing great athletes had to do was step out in faith, to take a risk. This might be the hardest step of all in the process. Most of us will admit we've got talent. Some guys brag about it all the time. Some of us even make the decision to do something about it, to work at it, to get the most out of our talent. But this third step can be very scary. This is the step that really stops a lot of men of God in their tracks. Maybe we're afraid people will laugh at us for our beliefs. Maybe we're afraid we're going to fall on our face. Maybe we're afraid that we just don't have the guts to stick it out and see it to the end. Basically, we're afraid to fail. You know what? It's time we stop being wusses about our talents and our faith. It's time we understand who they really belong to, God. He didn't give them to you just so you could enjoy them. It's time we get out of the stands and onto the playing field of life and put them to use. Listen to what the Apostle Paul told the Ephesians. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Did you know that God had prepared work in advance for you to do? The big question is, are you doing it? Coming up in Session 3, we'll see what we can learn from Hall of Fame athletes about how we can train to get the most out of these talents, skills, and abilities the Lord is calling us to use. But for now, let's go to the discussion guide.